I have a friend who suddenly began having some health issues, specifically issues surrounding her blood glucose levels. They went too high, the fasting blood sugar levels, and she was in the pre-diabetic range. Her doctor was very concerned and basically told her you need to lose weight, you need to look at your nutrition, and you need to move more, exercise more. Not bad advice. So she came to me and spoke with me about it and asked what I thought. And I advised her to begin walking more, especially after meals, just to get up and move around anywhere from 5 minutes to 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe a morning walk to start her day. I advised her to begin doing some resistance training, work with a trainer on this so that she could be safe and learn proper form. And then I explained to her how our nutrition can affect our blood glucose levels and how our hormones can affect our blood sugar levels, especially once we transition through menopause. So she took a couple of pieces of my advice surrounding the nutrition, and she cut back on the type of carbs that could potentially raise her blood glucose levels, such as the sweets, which are the obvious ones. But she admitted to me she really loves bread, and she pretty much cut that out of her diet for the most part. And then she began to do a lot of walking and even some hiking. Well, she's lost, I believe we're at 13 pounds now. And if I recall, she started this journey in May. And when she runs her blood work again with her doctor, I am going to bet that it comes back much better than the previous time. This is what we're going to talk about today, the effect of blood sugar on our ability to lose weight, maintain a healthy weight, its connection to weight loss resistance, and then the importance of keeping blood glucose stable and being insulin sensitive as we age. As women, we are particularly vulnerable to this dysregulation of blood glucose, and I'm going to dive into that in a bit. This is a subject I've covered quite a bit on my podcast in several episodes, but I want to dive a little bit deeper and I want to talk about the role of wearing a continuous glucose monitor, a CGM. These have gotten extremely popular over the last year. I actually wore one last spring, early winter, and into spring from NutriSense. That's NutriSense. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't receive anything from the company. That was the one that I chose, and I was very impressed with the level of service. I was assigned a dietitian, a registered dietitian, who helped me interpret the results. Now, naturally, I have a background in nutrition, so much of this I was able to understand why levels were going up and make some corrections, but it was nice to have the support of the registered dietitian. Now, this is not something I feel we need to do continuously. We don't need to always wear the monitor, but I believe it gives us valuable information that we can use. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit further. Who should be wearing one? Who maybe should not be wearing one? Apparently, there are a few of my colleagues in the space, fellow nutrition, health, and fitness coaches, who have been attacked for suggesting that midlife women and women that have gone through menopause and beyond wear a CGM. They've been attacked for this, saying that it's irresponsible to have a non-diabetic wear the monitor. I disagree because we have so many measurements that we do now. We measure body fat. We can do tests that tell our biological age. We look at the number on the scale. To me, this is another piece of data that can be potentially used to improve our nutrition and lifestyle habits. So I want to start with what it means to be metabolically flexible, because that is really a pillar of health, and the majority of Americans are not metabolically flexible. The figures vary. I've heard 94% of Americans, 96%. Many of these figures were taken in 2018, 2019, before we went through what we went through, where the world was shut down for a time. And I would expect that if studies are updated, that this number is going to actually be higher, and the percentage of metabolically healthy individuals is going to be rather low. And really, we can see this. We can just be out in the population, at the mall, at church, wherever, and we can see that many Americans are overweight, many Americans are obese, and even if they're not, there are certain signs, like there's that belly fat you can see, even if somebody's on the thinner side. Postmenopausal women, especially, you do see this in men as well. So we can see these signs of the waistline being too big in proportion to the hip, which is a sign of metabolic issues. So we have to start with a step-by-step process to become metabolically flexible. And I'm going to take you through that process. But what does it mean to have metabolic flexibility? It simply means that your body can use fat for fuel, or it can use carbohydrates or sugar for fuel. It can go between those two sources. Many people are simply burning on glucose, burning on sugar. They're called sugar burners, and they really aren't very effective at reaching into those fat stores. And you want that metabolic flexibility, and you want to remain insulin sensitive. So insulin comes in after a meal. I've talked about this quite a bit in former episodes, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but you have a meal, the hormone insulin comes in, it takes excess blood glucose, blood sugar, and transmits it to the cells where it can be used for energy. A problem occurs when insulin is being released too frequently. Blood glucose is dysregulated, it's very high, and then you're crashing down the other side. This can lead to insulin resistance, meaning our bodies are not recognizing the hormone insulin. They're not effectively using insulin, and you get an excess of blood glucose, which can be dangerous. It can lead to type 2 diabetes, being insulin resistant. It's been linked with dementia, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, and simply being overweight, which we obviously don't want. So number one, and this may surprise you for number one, and I'm going to explain where it's coming from, is to start with your mindset. And now I'm not fond of that word, but honestly, I don't have a better word other than mindfulness or attitude. And really, mindset is your awareness and how you approach your health. When we're talking about mindfulness around health and your mindset, it is your attitude going into a nutrition exercise program, how you view everything, and your awareness of how your lifestyle habits are coming into play and affecting your health, your weight, all of the things that we are concerned about. So what I see being in the field for over 10 years now, I started in group fitness, and it wasn't long before I was personal training, I was coaching, I took a certification for fitness nutrition, actually two different ones. So I moved into that field and became aware that there was a true need for women who are in perimenopause, that threshold leading into menopause and menopause and post. That these women have unique challenges, including myself. I'm almost 62. I've been through all of these stages, and I really feel I can speak into this. It brings unique challenges. So that was my journey into the field. And having worked in really exercise, nutrition, and fitness for over 10 years now, I can say that mindset comes first. The attitude somebody has, their willingness to implement, and then their willingness to remain consistent, and finally, a willingness to be a little bit uncomfortable for a while. If you make lifestyle changes and you change your eating habits and you give up your bread or your chocolate cake or your alcohol or you start exercising, there's a period of time where it's a little uncomfortable. You have cravings, you want to reach for that bread, you feel like you're being deprived. The exercise makes you a little sore, maybe a little tired. It's challenging to get to the gym. You have to be willing to sit in a place of discomfort temporarily, knowing that that discomfort is going to turn into something so much bigger and more powerful for your health and your body. I went through that whole process and I did it cold turkey, which I don't recommend, but I just dove right in, realized I needed to make nutritional changes. I was already doing the exercise and lifting, so that wasn't an issue for me. But giving up the sugar, giving up the bread, giving up the chips and some of the processed food and diet sodas was hard for me to do. And I was uncomfortable. I was grumpy. But you have to sit in that discomfort, experience it, because it's part of breaking these habits. Our food supply is highly addictive. This is what makes it hard to moderate. It makes it hard to gradually move away because it's so addictive. And so you almost have to really pull yourself back. And then the things you take out of your diet, you have to replace with other more healthier options. So the mindset you must get right, and you must be extremely honest with yourself. So I work with a lot of women, and over this past several months, I've done the Buns and Guns program. I've done the Slim Stomach. Of course, I've got ladies in my Fit and Fierce and people in my community that I speak with. And what I see is very, very few are willing to follow the plan. Just very few. I get a lot of responses. I'll give some of them to you. And this is not a judgment at all. It's an observation. And what I'm hoping is that maybe you see yourself in one of the groups that I'm going to describe, and then you move toward changing this and doing something for your body that's for the better and for your health. So first of all, you have the ghosting. Somebody enters a program and sometimes they're implementing and they just prefer to do so quietly. They don't want to be part of a group. They don't want to be in the Facebook group, and that's totally fine. And I do hear from those individuals, usually later on by email or a message on Instagram or some such place, that they implemented, they got great results, they thank me, but really they weren't active in the group. But that's rare. That's the very few. Most people you don't hear from, they've signed up for the program and they have a history of signing up for a lot of different programs and following a lot of different fitness people online. And I'll tell you something funny in a minute. I got to make a mental note so I don't forget. Sometimes I say I'm going to tell you something and then I go move on to the next thing and forget. So I've got to make that mental note. But they're not really implementing. They're buying the program and they have the best of intentions. It's not like they buy the program with the intent of not doing the program. It's that when it comes to the implementation, they're stuck and they keep thinking a different program, a different method, a different coach is going to get them where they want to go. So they kind of ghost and they're quiet, and it's usually because they're a little embarrassed because they have not implemented, they haven't changed anything, they haven't started the exercise or done any of the suggested meals or the suggested recipes and grocery lists. They just haven't implemented. And this is not a judgment. I have done this with business programs. I haven't done it with fitness programs, but I've done it with business programs. Like I'll get a course about YouTube or a course about Instagram or Reels, and I have the best intention of going through that. I get busy and I get shiny object syndrome and I'm off to something else, I'm working with my clients. I put that on the back burner and I don't implement, and it collects digital dust. So I get it. And then I'm not active in the group because really I have nothing to say because I haven't implemented the program. So this is not a judgment, but I think we have to really be honest with ourselves. And if we see ourselves in that, I would say do not buy another program until you have implemented the digital ones that you have. Go through your programs, go through meal plans, recipe books, choose one that you're going to implement and implement it, because until you actually do the thing, you don't know what works and what doesn't work if you're not taking any action. You've got to take some action. The other group I see is they question and want to change the program all along the way. And this typically happens more with one-on-one. And you give them the roadmap. Okay, this is what we need to be doing, step-by-step plan. I try not to overwhelm my women with too much information at once. And then I'll get some pushback. Well, I can't do the exercise because I'm tired or I worked late. I can't do the meal plans because I don't like to cook. I didn't do my grocery shopping. I didn't get to the store. So I had to go through the drive-through of whatever restaurant and pick something up. And to me, that simply is, it's excuses. And it's not that it makes me angry. As a coach, it doesn't make me angry and it doesn't disappoint me. I feel for the woman who isn't able to implement. I actually feel, and then I will many times blame myself as a coach. Should I have presented the information differently? Should I have texted them more often? Should I have given them more information? And I'll go back and forth. And many times it's just, they're just not going to implement. I had a woman several years ago, and I literally tried everything with her. She first wanted recipes. She said, I can't implement because I don't have the recipes. So I sat down and I wrote all these recipes and sent them out and made them just beautiful and perfect. And she said, well, now I need a sample meal plan and how to put it all together. So I did that. I did the sample meal plan. Nothing, nothing. The exercise plan, I made it as short as I could conceivably make it because she said, well, the workouts are too long. I don't have time, or I'm not in the mood, or I'm not motivated. So I tried to make them fun. I was doing everything. I was changing her plan around every corner. Nothing. She went through 12 weeks. I finally came down to, will you take a walk? And she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't take a walk. And the weather was nice at this time. And it was sad to me. I felt bad. I felt bad as a coach. And again, I questioned myself, but I've seen this before. And like I said, there's either this ghosting, they disappear, they're embarrassed, or they start pushing back on you and giving you these reasons that really aren't feasible reasons. And I've actually reached a point where I'm really only going to work with people that are truly, truly motivated and ready to take action. Now, I can't always tell that. Sometimes in a consultation, someone will seem very serious, and then we start the program and the seriousness lasts about a week and then that's it. So I do try to vet them, try to make sure that I'm only working with people that really want change. And that might sound selfish, and it's not, because I'm not the best coach for somebody who is going to make a lot of excuses and not be motivated and push back and question every little thing. It's fine to question and wonder why I put an exercise in or a food in. I'm totally fine with that. But if the questioning is, I don't want to follow what you're telling me to do, and I want to do this over here, I have just reached this point where it's just not a good fit. And so that's not best for the client. They actually need somebody that maybe works a little more on the mindset and the psychology and starts from that place. But I'm not the best coach for them. So I've begun to really kind of take a look at that because I'm not about selling a bunch of programs. I really am not. At almost 62, uh, my life and my time means so much to me that I just really want to work with people that can get the benefit of what I do. So I hope that isn't misconstrued, but that is exactly how I personally feel as a coach working with people. So you have those two camps, and then you kind of have a third where they implement about half of what you give them, but then they go off and they do, YouTube videos that are not the best exercises for them, or they start adding in foods that they shouldn't add in and questioning all of the food choices and not wanting to give up certain things. And again, I will try to work with them. I will try to moderate as much as I can, but at a certain point, we all are responsible for our own decisions. So it starts with the mindset. The CGM I mentioned can help. It's not for everybody. That's a continuous glucose monitor. Mine came in this little package and it's painless. You just put it on quick on your arm, and then you have an app on your phone and it gives you real-time information about the foods you're eating, the effects of stress, coffee, lack of sleep or a good night's sleep. All of that is there and very valuable information. It will also tell you if your blood glucose is getting into what I would consider, and doctors would consider, a dangerous range. So people who should consider this, if you are pre-diabetic and you're worried about it and you really want to figure out exactly what's causing the spikes, you have a family history of diabetes, PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. I can barely spit that out because they often have dysregulated blood glucose. That's very common. Hypothyroidism, where the thyroid isn't functioning correctly, that can cause issues. If you're experiencing energy crashes after you eat a high carb meal, moodiness, hangriness, shakiness, you feel like you peak at the top and crash back down on the other side, you might want to consider a CGM. If you have a hard relationship with food and you want to get a better relationship, and I don't really like that terminology, relationship with food, but once again, I use it because pretty much everyone gets what I mean. It allows you to become more aware. So if you are prone to some emotional or boredom eating or whatever it is, it brings to mind that you should be aware of what you're consuming, how much you're consuming, when you're having it. It's an awareness thing. But we always have to take into account the bio-individuality, and that's another reason to wear the CGM. Sweet potato I eat doesn't spike my blood glucose, but I've heard of several women having huge spikes when they eat a sweet potato. I eat beans. I do very well with beans. It has almost no effect on my blood sugar level. Other women might find that it spikes there. So this bio-individuality and differences, you're going to become aware of when you're wearing the CGM. You should be seeing a 90 to a 99 fasting glucose level. If you're creeping up to 100, that is definitely a problem. So you really want to stay under 100. And there are some individuals, doctors, health coaches in the space that say really 99 is too high. You're wanting to be below 95 or right at 90 or a little bit below that. And what's been happening over the years is that level, the level of normal is getting higher and higher and higher because normal is based on the general population. And if the general population is metabolically inflexible and having issues burning fat for fuel and issues with blood glucose, it's going to raise that level. So I would say, having it around the 90 would be a safer place. When blood glucose is too high, it can damage the lining of blood vessels and it can lead to kidney issues. It can also cause problems in the brain. Our brain needs blood glucose, but too much is toxic. It can cause our mitochondria, which are basically, and I don't like using another term that's so general, powerhouse of the cell. It powers the cell. It's the reason I'm talking to you now. It is the reason really of life and health. We want our mitochondria healthy, so it can damage those as well. So tracking simply helps people connect the dots. They're able to see, oh, when I do this, this happens. Now, who should not wear one? If this is going to absolutely make you obsessive, and you know you're an obsessive person, you're obsessive with the scale, maybe you've had a eating disorder in the past, might not be good for you to use the CGM. You might want to use other methods just by how you feel and other data rather than that. Remember, it takes decades, and I do mean decades, to develop the signs, the warning signs, and then the actual pre-diabetes and diabetes. It is a long road to that type 2 diabetes. It doesn't happen overnight. Weight doesn't come on overnight. So learning the warning signs and taking action early can be very helpful. So a warning sign would be you eat a meal and your CGM shoots up to 160 milligrams per deciliter. That would be a warning sign that you are not metabolically flexible, you're having an issue regulating your blood glucose, and then you might want to speak with a nutritionist, registered dietitian, your medical provider, preferably somebody who really is going to be more integrative. Keep in mind, it's going to take time to reverse. It's not going to happen overnight. It's like losing weight. It didn't come on overnight. It's not going to come off overnight. And if weight comes off really, really fast, typically it's muscle and water. We don't want that. And then remembering it's not always about obesity. I mentioned PCOS just a moment ago. And 25% of people having these blood glucose regulation problems are estimated to be thin, very thin PCOS women. Another thing to consider is many ethnicities have a thrifty gene type. So that's another instance where you could be not overweight and actually thin, but have a blood glucose problem. And specifically Southeast Asia, there's a couple of others where they actually got very thrifty with holding on to the blood glucose. So when I say thrifty, it's not a good thing. It's like let's have our blood glucose spike up high. They're more prone to those high spikes. They're more prone to insulin coming in. And it really was more of a survival mechanism in times of famine, in times where there simply wasn't enough food. It's the body's way of compensating for that. So if you can think of at that time, high insulin levels and high blood sugar levels actually being something that benefited the person. Now we're in the modern society, and obviously that doesn't work anymore in our modern society. Keep in mind not just bio-individuality, but certain health conditions, life circumstances, stage of life that play into this. So if you are a woman and you're still having periods, you're still having your cycle, you will find that it is higher, the blood glucose, blood sugar in the luteal phase and lower in the follicular phase. And that can be helpful information to know so that you can plan your nutrition around this a little bit better and exercise. In menopause, we start to have a problem with blood glucose regulation. This is linked to really a cascade of hormonal things happening in the body, including a problem with cortisol. The fight or flight hormone can lead to some uh, glucose problems. We become less tolerant to carbs. I've definitely seen this, and I always had a very high tolerance for carbs. And I've noticed since turning 60 that I simply cannot consume as many, or my weight goes up and I start to have blood glucose issues. Hydration, this is a personal circumstance that plays a role. Many people are walking around hydrated and don't know it. And think about it, it makes sense. If you're drinking enough water, if you have enough electrolytes, it's really going to dilute that glucose. It's going to dilute it down. It's kind of like if you just had salt and there it was by itself, as opposed to salt water. You pour in the water, it really is a less concentration of salt with that water. It's the same principle. So having electrolytes if you're exercising, and if you're out in the heat, you live in a hot climate, that can be very helpful, replenishing that and drinking enough water. Exercise raises the levels of blood sugar, but that's normal. It's your body's way of trying to get more energy to you because you need energy. You're in the middle of a HIIT workout, a high intensity interval training. If you're wearing the CGM, you are going to see that go up. Now, if it's going up to 200, that's an issue. But if it's going up, just, I don't know, 140, 150. I've seen mine do that quite a bit when I'm doing high intensity, or if I'm doing a leg day and I'm really a strenuous workout, I've seen it go up. You just don't want that 180 to 200. You want to make sure you're recovering from exercise. A lack of recovery can cause problems. A lack of quality sleep can cause blood glucose to go too high. Alcohol can cause a crash down the other side at night. So you would think it would just be high all night, but it actually causes a dip and a crash, which is not good. Excessive glucose levels are responsible for aging. It's called glycation, so a rapid aging. So you're going to look older. You're going to have more lines on your face. I even just heard a stat about how we have more wrinkles if we're having an issue with our blood glucose. The mitochondria are strained, and we also start to stash glucose in our fat cells. It's our body's way of protecting us. Our body wants to protect us, so it scoops it up just like it would any toxin and stores it in the fat cells. It also makes hormonal symptoms worse. So a lot of times when women are having hot flashes, yes, if they are in that menopause window or late perimenopause, it can definitely be estrogen, a dip in estrogen, but it can also be a dysregulation of blood glucose levels. Number 3, with obtaining metabolic flexibility. So we talked about possibly wearing a CGM, getting that awareness. We talked about the mindset, another form of awareness. Now I'm going to give you some actionable steps that you can start doing. Now, Don't be that person that says, "Oh, I'm so excited," writes down the steps, and then does nothing because they're overwhelmed. Choose one thing, choose two things. That's it. Just choose something. And then maybe in a couple of weeks, once you're used to that first habit, you add on another. So let's take a look. I'm going to give you several of these. I don't expect you to implement all of them. So to have less of a spike, the order you eat your food in matters. So there's two different thoughts here. Some say protein first, then your veggies, then the carbs. Some say the veggies, the protein, and the carbs. I've really settled on the latter, just having listened to a few experts and done some reading, some of the research. Eating your vegetables, then your protein, then your carbohydrate last can make a huge difference. And I've heard numbers as high as 75%. So in other words, after you eat a meal, 75% less of a glucose impact for that meal, not for the whole day or in general, but for that meal. 75% is a big one. So just by reordering your food, you can make a big, big difference. You want to, in general, reduce certain types of carbs, obviously the refined ones. The very starchy carbs are going to have more of an impact. You want to have more vegetables, more fruits. You don't want to overdo the fruits because I do see people do that, but a serving of fruit or 2 servings of fruit per day can be really helpful. You can cook a sweet potato and then put it in the fridge and cool it and eat it cold. That will lessen that impact. So there's a few things there you can do. Taking a 5 to 10-minute walk after meals, and this could be in the house. It's very hot in Albuquerque right now. It's about, I think, 105 degrees out there. I'm looking out my window. It is unbearably hot. And so, no, I'm not going to walk out in 105-degree heat and take a walk. And so, what I do after a meal, if I'm working from home, is I'll do a lot of walking around the house. If I'm at the gym, I try to stand between sets and not sit between sets. I have a broken toe right now, so it's making it a little bit more difficult. But I try to really just move around, maybe walk around the equipment, walk over and fill my water bottle, just find something, some way to get movement in. But you want that 5 to 10 minutes of walking after a meal can make a huge difference. Obviously, prioritizing strength training and exercise is going to be huge. So a combination of zone 2 exercise, and there's varying levels for this. Zone 2 can be, I've heard 60 to 70%, 65 to 70%, but you get the idea, in and around that range where you could talk, but you're breathless and you're moving briskly. The strength training gives a place for your muscles to deposit blood glucose and a way for your muscle to act like a sink or a sponge and just kind of soak all that up and clean all that up. So that's something that you can implement. Stress management, and stress management's going to look different for everybody. My idea of stress management might stress you out. For me, prayer is probably the most effective thing that I have in my arsenal and instantly calms me down. I love my pets. I often will hold my pets. That's another thing I do. Walking, deep breathing. These are all things that have helped me. Yoga. Sleep, as I mentioned, is highly important. Using something like an Aura ring. Once again, that brings awareness. It's not that the Aura ring is going to make you sleep, but I found that I slept better and better the longer I wore the ring. And I do believe, there's no science here, but I believe my brain prioritized it and said, oh, we're paying attention to this. And my body began to come along for the ride. I know that sounds funny, but I've heard a few of my clients say this and my husband say it too. This is one that's very easy. A tablespoon of vinegar and a big glass of water before a meal will reduce a blood glucose spike by 30%. It can be any vinegar. It doesn't have to be apple cider. That's my preference. It's a little bit easier to take it down because obviously vinegar is not the most attractive thing to be drinking, but that can make a big difference. Calf raises while you're sitting at your desk. Just simple calf raises. There's some research on how the soleus can help with this blood glucose response. I know it sounds crazy. It sounded crazy to me, but that is what the science is showing us. And then breaking your fast, and I don't mean a fast of 24 hours. I mean your 12-hour fast, preferably 12 to 14 hours. with a savory breakfast and only fruit as a carbohydrate. So having your carbohydrates around your exercise, like maybe you've gone to the gym, you've done a leg day, you come home and you have your starch or your carb then, but having your breakfast very savory. So these are going to be things like yesterday I had salmon and I had brown rice. And this morning I had an omelet with some veggies in there. That's very savory to me. I've made savory breakfast from leftover lamb, leftover chicken. I just try to make it more like an actual meal with no sweet in there. And if I have any sweet, it's fruit. Once again, you want the complex carbs mostly around your workouts, and you want protein and veggies to be the star of the show. So these are just a few of the things that you can be implementing. And then remembering that you're not as insulin sensitive at night. You're more insulin sensitive earlier in the day. So obviously nighttime isn't the time to have a big piece of chocolate cake or to be snacking or to be eating late. That is going to dysregulate. So I hope you found this helpful. I really want you to choose, once again, just a couple of things. And the easiest things, I'm going to not read through all of them, but the easiest things is going to be to change the order of your food. So vegetables, protein, and carbohydrates last. Another easy thing is to just move after a meal for 5 minutes, even if it's in your house. And another easy one is the 1 tablespoon of vinegar in a big glass of water. Calf raises at your desk. How simple is that? That's not a big deal. So those are very simple ones that anybody can start. And like I gave the example of my friend, she has not added the strength training yet, and she's not done the full-on nutrition changes, but she made a couple of changes. She cut the bread, she upped her walks and movement during the day, and boom, 13 pounds down. So don't think that the little things don't matter. And then just going back to that mindset piece, once again, not a judgment. I just am seeing more and more, talking to people in my DMs, hearing from my clients, running programs, that implementation and consistency is the reason people don't succeed with these changes they're trying to make. They're just simply, they either get overwhelmed and they don't feel like they can implement, or they've got a kind of a mental block there, or they let life take over and circumstances. I see this a lot. I actually had a woman say she accidentally ate a piece of chocolate cake, and she was serious. I don't know how someone could accidentally eat an entire piece of chocolate cake, but this is the mindset that I'm talking about. Instead of saying, you know what, I ate the chocolate cake, this is going to happen once in a while. Tomorrow I do better. I'm going to go take a walk after that chocolate cake, or drink some vinegar before the chocolate cake, or whatever it is. Instead of being just very honest with yourself, I just do see this. Whoop, there goes my watch. I do see this tendency to get stuck in just analyzing everything and then being paralyzed. So paralysis by analysis is what we call it in the business world, but it really pertains to any big life change we're trying to make. I mean, I will tell you what I did, and I am nothing special. I took the plan my coach gave me when I really decided to make some changes to my body. I took that plan and I implemented it to the letter. I really did. And I don't say this like, wow, I'm so good. But at some point, I realized this is just not going to happen unless I dig in. This is not going to happen. And I had tried in the past to kind of clean up my nutrition. And it wasn't that I looked bad, but I didn't have the muscle. I didn't have the muscle tone. I wasn't as healthy as I am now. So I knew I needed to make some changes, and I struggled with that. But when I hired that coach, I dug in and I just decided this is happening. This is happening right now. And I think sometimes we need to have a little tough love on ourselves. Not that we beat ourselves up or hate ourselves, nothing like that. We change because we love our body. We love the body that God has given us. We love the idea of our health and vitality and youth. And we want to look good in our clothes. We want to look sexy. And we want to have that vitality. And vitality is probably the best word, where you're thriving. You're not just living or surviving, you're thriving. And that takes effort. You got to do the thing. It's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen if you do the thing one day and then don't do it for three. It's just not going to happen. So, some honest talk there, and I hope it's helpful. I want to remind you that my book, Finding Purpose in the Pause, is available on Amazon. I will include the link in the show notes. This book is specifically about the transition of perimenopause, so in and around 40, 45, all the way through menopause and post. So really women 40 and up will benefit from this book. It includes nutrition, exercise suggestions. I make a few supplement suggestions. I'm always very, very careful with those, and also some information on how to safely implement intermittent fasting, and implement stress relief techniques, sleep. All of the things are in there. And I have a special gift, my 14-day nutrition detox. So all you need to do is either screenshot the page where you ordered it with the order number. You can send that to me on Instagram at Carol Covino Fitness. That's at Carol Covino Fitness. You can email me, carol@carolcovino.com, or you can go to my website and there is actually a page where you can enter that number. And I got a question. Somebody was saying, I don't see the number, and you have to actually purchase the book before you see the number. It's not going to pop up prior. So just kind of a word of advice there. I also have partnered with Thorne, and I do want to mention this incredible company. They really have a stringent process where they go through each supplement to make sure that it does not have toxic ingredients or ingredients that have been banned. They receive an outside certification. I can't remember it offhand. I'll have that information on the next podcast. But they receive an additional certification from a company that basically verifies that the supplement is safe. What I've done is I've gone through the supplement. I set up my store. So I actually have an online store, and use the link in the bio and you will see my supplement suggestions. And if you want me to add you to the store, you can just let me know, reach out to me, as I said, on Instagram. And if you do, I can get you some special discounts if you're actually a part of my store. But go check it out. I really list some of the things that are good for blood sugar control, and some of the supplements that can be a healthful support for perimenopause and menopause and weight management. So I think you'll find that helpful. And that is it for now. So wherever you are in the world, I wish you every blessing, and until next time, bye-bye.